Welcome to Afros and Audio's Black History Month interview series. My name is Talib Jasir, founder and CEO of Afros and Audio Podcast Festival and the Vanguard Podcast Network. I'm excited to spotlight 29 outstanding indie podcast creators and professionals who answered the call to be a part of this series. My guest today is Talaya Dendy. Welcome and thank you for being here. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. We're doing very well today.
Thank you. I'm glad you're here. It's awesome opportunity to get to talk to you and get to know you better and learn more about the podcast. Talaya, you transformed your personal experience with cancer into a career of advocacy and support. Can you share with our listeners? We'll get into the podcast for sure, but want people to get to know a little bit more about your why. So can you share with our listeners how your journey as a cancer survivor influenced the founding of On the Other Side?
Absolutely. So in 2011, I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma out of the blue. And I say that because I was never sick before other than the cold or the flu. And a year prior, I had went to my primary care doctor and voiced concern about a lump that I had on the side of my neck. And she pretty much blew it off and said, "Oh, it's probably nothing. You work out a lot, probably just a pulled muscle." Well, a year later, the pulled muscle was still there. So I went to a different primary care doctor, went through a number of tests, and it was confirmed that I was told that I had Hodgkin's lymphoma. And so, of course, I was very surprised, taken aback. I just didn't know what to think, what was going on. And at that time, I was really focused on climbing the corporate ladder. Unbeknownst to me, that really doesn't work too well for people like me. So, but learn now. But anyway, was focused on climbing the corporate ladder. That really just kind of turned my world upside down. Of course, I wanted to get married, have a family, all those things. But all of those things were put on hold because of the diagnosis. And throughout my cancer journey, I had a really great oncologist. However, even though I had a great oncologist and a great healthcare team, there were still a lot of gaps in my care. And one thing that was really missing for me was like that emotional support, having someone to talk to who had been through something similar, to something that I had been through. But then also just having the representation. There was no one my age, no one that looked like me, no one I felt like that could really relate. And so the emotional gaps, just the huge learning curve that's involved when you have cancer, just a lot of different things that change in your life. No one warned me or told me about those things. And so that is what led me to start my organization On the Other Side.
Well, thank you for sharing that story. That's a good why. It's a why that you wish wasn't a good why, right? You wish there was no why to it, but it's one of those things where you discover yourself inside of it, and discover that point and purpose at the same time. So I'm happy for you in that regard.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. So your enterprise emphasizes a patient-centered, and this is what you were referencing earlier, and a holistic approach. So how do you integrate this philosophy into your cancer doula support services?
Absolutely. So what I tell people is typically when someone reaches out to me, it is really because they've received a cancer diagnosis or they've started treatment. They're not sure what to do. And that's the surface level. They are looking for some kind of guidance and support. However, the more that I talk with my clients, the more that I get to know them, there's so many other things that are uncovered. For example, maybe they're unhappy with their job. Maybe they're having problems in their relationship or their family. Maybe they're having a hard time communicating. Maybe they've lost hope. Or so many other things. There's other things in their life that they want to change. Maybe they're dealing with suppressed trauma from many years ago. And so that is how I integrate that philosophy into my work, is really getting to know my clients, but then also not just focusing on the cancer, but what other things in their life need to be uncovered and healed.
Absolutely. Stress compromises the immune system and trauma and the symptoms of those things. So having this level of support is so important. for that holistic health that you're referencing is not just one thing. Hardly ever in most things. Yeah, for sure. So again, thank you for sharing that. Your podcast, you mentioned in the intake that has broadened your worldview and boosted your confidence. So can you elaborate on how hosting Navigating Cancer Together has impacted your personal and your professional life?
Oh, yes. It's it's another thing that I'm really excited about. Cancer led me to my organization, but then also this podcast. And it has really improved my personal life because, again, it has given me more confidence. Prior to being diagnosed with cancer, and then even before starting my podcast, I really wasn't much of a public speaker, but I've gotten a lot of speaking engagements because of my podcast. I feel more comfortable. It has helped me to hone in my speaking skills. But then also from a worldview, it has really allowed me to just talk with so many different people that I probably wouldn't be able to talk to or would have met in other circumstances. And so those are the main things, just being able to talk to different kinds of people, learn about their backgrounds, and learn about what they've gone through. And it really reminds me that even though society and the world wants us to feel like we're so different, but a lot of the things that one person goes through, someone totally across the ocean is going through the same thing. And so I think just having that ability to connect with so many different kinds of people, learning, that is another thing, just being able to learn so many different things. And then also just learning this technology. Many people that have not, done podcasting, they think you just get on the mic and you start talking. No, there's a whole bunch of things that have to happen before, during, and after. And so just being able to learn new skills, all of those things have been a blessing.
Nice. And you just talked about that a bit. As a self-taught podcaster, you released over 120 episodes, which congratulations. That's a big deal. It really is. What were some of the, or are some of the biggest challenges you faced in this journey, and how have you overcome them?
Yes. So being an indie podcaster, doing everything on your own, managing everything, that has been a challenge. For me, one of the things that I love podcasting, but editing is like, ooh, here we go. Okay, Talaya, get your motivation going for this. So the biggest challenge for me is just the editing piece. I'm blessed to have a waiting list. So getting people to come on my podcast hasn't been a challenge, but really just the editing and managing and balancing everything. Right now, I'm releasing episodes weekly, and I'm finding that I may have to go to bi-weekly just because the editing piece is so time consuming, the promotion piece. But then also just trying to get sponsorships and funding if, people would be willing to, contribute to the podcast in some way that would allow me to be able to maybe hire someone to edit and take some of the things off of my plate.
Yeah, absolutely. I've said it before. I feel like podcasting, I had locks for 10 years, so I know that effort that goes into natural hair. It takes a long time to manage and maintain it. And it's a silly analogy, but podcasting is not easy just because you think it's a mic and you talking. There's so much more that goes into it to maintain it. So once again, despite all of the obstacles, despite the time consuming, you managed to push through and do it. And that's more than a lot of folks can say. So still, congratulations. And I definitely hope for you that you find that support so that you can continue to sustain your podcast in a way that you want. There's support out here, and so definitely let's figure out how to make that happen for sure. So you said that one of your guests commended you for being an organized and effective communicator. And we all know how important that is when it comes to podcasting. So what strategies have you employed to ensure a smooth and engaging experience for your podcast guests?
Yes, one thing that I found to be very helpful is even before I agree to have someone as a guest on my show, of course, I do the research. what kind of work have they done? What other things have they been involved in? To me, it's not really important about, how many followers they have and all those things. What's really important to me is their why and what's behind their story. And so, what I do is I just hold a really quick 15-minute meet and greet. When someone reaches out to me or I see someone that, hey, I think they might be a good guest, I will reach out and schedule a 15-minute meet and greet. And that is where I can kind of connect with them, tell a little bit about myself, learn a little bit more about them, but then what does that energy feel like? And just kind of sit with that. And that'll help me better engage. Well, if it's someone that I want to bring on, what is the best way to communicate with them? What's their style? What's their personality? And so having that in check prior to hopping on the mic really makes a big difference. And so that allows me to better prepare. The other thing that I do is I have a spreadsheet. Yep, I like my spreadsheets, and I use Trello, and that kind of allows me to streamline what are the things that I need from my guests. Do I need their bio? Do I need their photo? What specific questions do I want to ask them? What are some things that they want to make sure that they cover during the interview, and just have all of that mapped out. And so when it's time for the interview, they have an idea of some of the key areas that we're going to cover. I have an idea, and that helps the conversation to go a lot smoother. Everyone feels more comfortable. And then after, we record, I release the episode, I send them all the information, graphics, audiograms, whatever that happens to be, links, so that when they share, they don't have to go find all these things. It's right there for them to share, and that helps the both of us.
Awesome. And was that a strategy that you put forth immediately, or that was after a few interviews you were like, I need something, I need a system?
When I first started, it was really more so like I didn't do the 15-minute meet and greet. That wasn't right away. But I did because I was a supply chain analyst in my prior life. And so planning and organization has always been a part of whatever it is that I do. So I did have my spreadsheet. Of course, as things went along and I learned more, there were more things added to that spreadsheet. But the 15-minute meet and greet was something that I felt like it would be beneficial for myself and the guest just to make that connection. Because I think sometimes, and all of us have probably experienced this, where you come across people who, they say they're interested in being a guest on your show. Of course, you want them to have something of value and interest to share with your listeners, but they may be more interested in pushing their book, promoting their book. And it's like, no, we're going to get to your book, but what advice or tips do you have for the listeners? And so being able to have that 15-minute meet and greet is a way to really filter that out and see who's really about sharing information and helping others.
Okay, so there is 15 minutes that could go by and you're like, yeah, no. That happens?
Yeah, that has happened. Not a lot though, but it is happening. Mm-hmm.
All right. No, listen, this is smart. This is your platform, your podcast. Mm-hmm. You standing with it, you do it the way you want. And I really respect the way that you approach it. It says a lot. It says a lot about your care and concern for your own audience, and the people that you were connecting with. Like, this isn't just a hi and bye. This is a connection. This is an opportunity, right? To be mutually beneficial. So no, I love that. You take the time to do that. That's very smart, very intuitive, and then you have that transferable skill of the professional world, which is always important. You got skills to make this work for yourself too. So drawing from your experience and your expertise, what advice would you give someone who is just starting their journey, whether it's a disability, a diagnosis, and they're trying to find this point and purpose in life in certain ways? What would you say to them?
Yeah, the first thing that I would say is, whatever your diagnosis is, it doesn't mean that that's the end of your life. It doesn't mean that life is over. That is a time more than ever to figure out your why. why do you want to live? It could be your family. It could be, maybe you want to take this big trip somewhere. It could be anything, but hone in on your why, because your why is what is going to carry you through those tough times. Your why is going to be your anchor, your reminder that, hey, this is why I have to keep pushing through. And the other thing is to always be an advocate for yourself. Don't be afraid to speak up. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to push back when you're not getting the answers that you need from your healthcare provider. The other thing is, if you don't feel like you are getting the answers that you need, or maybe you don't feel comfortable with the answers that you're getting, always get a second, maybe even a third opinion sometimes. And so those are the things that I would tell someone who has just, gotten that diagnosis.
Yeah, for sure. And, a lot of us, we can't relate to experiences that we've never had, right? It's hard for us to have our sensitivities in that direction until, right, it happens to us or someone that we care about. This work, the podcasts that you're doing, as well as the work that you're doing, it's one of those things of education, right? Educating people, getting people to care, and then wanting people to get involved.
Yeah.
Like those are my pillars and my idea of strategy when it comes to work such as yours. It's a service, right? And so when you think about your podcast, what would you say? Like, this is why you need to come and listen to Navigating Cancer Together.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. That's a great question. The first thing that I would say is no one wants to really talk about cancer. It's not a glamorous topic. It's not pretty. It's very scary. It's life-threatening. And then also you throw in the stigmas that are tied to cancer. Everyone thinks that someone with cancer is someone bald. They're very frail. They look sick. And today, a lot of people have cancer and you really don't know. And so I think it's important for people to, whether you have cancer or not, to learn about it because it's everywhere. I bet just about every one of us knows someone who has had cancer. And it's important to listen, because why wait until something happens? Not saying that it's going to happen, but if it does, listen to get some tools and tips. Hear some other people's stories. And if it ever shows up in your life in some way, you'll have this in the back of your mind, like, oh, there's this podcast out there and they said, when you get a diagnosis to do this. Or if there's a caregiver out there struggling and they're burnt out, they don't know how to help their loved one. There's this podcast, Navigating Cancer Together, where one of the guests shared their stories as a caregiver, gave some really great tips. And so I think that it's important for people to don't wait until it happens. And if it has already happened to you, I should say, here's a resource. You can learn about, what are cancer patients going through? What do people do when they first get that diagnosis? How are they getting through some of the side effects of treatment? What does it look like when they are into survivorship and treatment is over? What are some of the guests struggling with? How are they working through those things? And then also, what other options are out there? What complementary therapies are out there that can help with side effects? Is it acupuncture? Is it massage? Oh, I heard about this really great naturopathic oncologist on the show. And so just listening, it can open you up to a lot of different things that you may not have been aware of, a lot of different resources. And then also the other important thing is, as I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of life lessons that come up in the podcast because, as I said, cancer, it starts there, but there's so many other things going on under the surface. And really, when you take a bigger look at it, the podcast is not just about cancer. It's about navigating life too.
I love that response. Thank you. That was an off the script question, but I just had to ask because I felt like you were going to have a beautiful answer to that.
Yeah.
And, something else that came up for me, I've lost people with cancer. I have people who are survivors, right? And an aunt right now who's dealing with the diagnosis. And it's like, for those of us jaded by cancer, in a lot of ways, but there's still hope, right? And not to forget that while I'm jaded, there needs to be hope. There needs to be love and compassion, and there's still this rallying cry around treatment and cures, and all this sort of thing. And so what are some things that you would say, and this is the get involved part, right? Another question I don't have written down, so bear with me. Hopefully I can get it out. But what are other ways, right, that you would encourage people to get involved? Whether definitely listening to your podcast to learn more, because from your podcast there are branches. Each guest creates another branch for opportunity to get involved, to learn, to educate. What are some of those things that you really say, no, I know you're pissed off at cancer. Like, I get it. But these are the organizations, these are the things that you really still need to be aware of and be involved in, if there's anything.
Yeah, I think, great question, by the way. I think that it's really important for our community, the Black community, to show up to different, whether it's a walk for breast cancer, and to just really learn about these things. Show up to webinars, whether you have cancer or not. Show up to webinars and hear about some of the things that they are struggling with. There is a lot of lack of diversity in healthcare, period. There's a lack of diversity in clinical research. That's very important. I know that there is that bad history of medical malpractice against the Black community. Very valid. I agree. There has been a history of medical mistreatment to us, to our ancestors. But on the flip side of the coin, it's very important to get involved in those clinical trials, because a lot of the clinical trials are based on the data from white people or Caucasian people. Those treatments may not work for us. We're kind of, our DNA is different. That has been proven. And so just learning more about clinical trials, learning more about how to get involved in those things. I think another important thing is to support organizations like Coils to Locks, amazing sisters who started this organization, this company, where they have created curly wigs for Black women. Before they started this, there were only straight wigs for white women. Well, our hair is not straight unless we, straighten it. But sometimes we may want a wig that represents the hair that was growing out of our heads, And so find organizations like Coils to Locks, it's a Black company, 2 Black sisters, and they said, hey, there was this need out there. We're going to step into it. And one of the sisters had breast cancer herself. She started it because she said, I was looking for wigs. I couldn't find any that were a representation of what my hair was like. And so I said, I'm going to do this. And so just finding those Black organizations that are doing things in the cancer space, that are doing this work. And as I started off, it's not glamorous, it's not pretty, but still Black people get cancer, and we need to have representation in this space. It's very critical. I cannot tell you from my personal experience, just being able to pick up a pamphlet in 2011 and see another Black person on it, the difference that it would have made. Being able to go to a support group where I wasn't the only Black person there, get involved, learn about what's out there, whether you or your loved ones are facing cancer or not. Cancer is everywhere now. You need to learn about it, find those organizations. Coils to Locks is one that really comes to mind. And I love the work that they're doing.
Thank you so much, Talaya. I asked that question for myself as well, right? And so being really jaded and upset with the C word, but it's not just a word. It's still being a very real issue. We know it, but we got to really know it. So thank you. Thank you for sharing that. You expressed a desire to promote your cancer doula support services. So could you tell us more about these services and how they benefit individuals and families dealing with cancer?
Absolutely. So I like to start off by saying that my support is all virtual. So there's no need to figure out a place to meet and leave your home. We can meet just like you and I are talking right now. And it starts off by having a 30-minute meet and greet. That is to make sure that it's a good fit for the both of us. It's a time to share some of the challenges and barriers that you're facing since your diagnosis. And then also, it's a time to learn about how I can support you with those specific challenges and barriers. And we meet, like I said, via Zoom, like we're doing now, or video conference. And we really talk about what it is that you're going through. So I'll give you an example. One of the women that I recently supported, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. Her family reached out to me and said, hey, we really need support. We don't know how to help our mom. She's really struggling. And so the initial meeting was just, what are you going through? How are things going with your healthcare team? And with that initial conversation, I discovered that, yeah, she was not getting the support, guidance, and direction that she needed. She was not being told about how certain things were going to go. For example, she was not being told how to prepare for chemotherapy treatment, what to expect, and what to do after. She had a really hard time eating. They really weren't giving her a lot of guidance on that. So she had lost a lot of weight. Now, I am not a certified dietitian or anything, nutritionist, anything like that, but I have so many other resources. So I was able to refer her to an oncology dietitian who specifically works with cancer patients. And that dietitian was able to kind of get her on a better path to getting some nourishment and nutrients so she could continue on with her chemotherapy treatments. Another thing that I worked with her on was getting a second opinion and ultimately switching doctors and healthcare teams. And then also she had to have surgery and then radiation. So helping her to really know what to expect and how to prepare for those two forms of treatment were things that we did together as well, making sure she had the information, making sure she had certain creams that will help her after, she had radiation, if she happened to experience radiation burns, talking with her family, guiding them, these are some ways that you can support your mother. These are some ways that you can have better communication with her. She might be holding this back because of this. And just helping them to really talk to each other more effectively, making sure that everyone understands what's going on, who needs what, and everyone supported. And so that's kind of an example of some of the guidance and support that I provide with my services. Again, everything's virtual. If someone happens to be local and they say, Talaya, could you meet me at my doctor's appointment and sit in and ask questions, maybe some things I don't think about, or take notes, that is an option too. But 99% of my services are virtual. And I have different options. I'm currently doing 1-hour sessions, but those are going to go away just because this kind of work involves more time together, really getting to know each other, getting comfortable with each other, and having that ability to go deep. And so I do have 1 and 3 month options as well.
I mean, navigating cancer together, basically, in a lot of ways. What a comprehensive service and opportunity, and one that probably couldn't come out the way that it does if not for your own experience and your own recognition of what's void in this space. What's the information gaps, right? What's the care, advocacy?
Yeah.
All that's so important, such important work. Thank you for doing that work. So in addition to your doula services, you mentioned affirmation cards and funding needs. So let's talk about it. The role of these affirmation cards in supporting cancer patients and your current funding goals to support this very, very important work.
Yes, so affirmation cards, I love them. I use them, and it's a great way, an easy way to get the self-care and self-soothing if you're even if you're not having a tough time, but particularly if you're having a tough time and you're like, I don't know if I can do this today, pull out an affirmation card and really focus on that message for the day. It could say something like, God's got your back. You can get through this. You know, you are more than worthy of being healthy. Just those kind of things that are very beneficial to get ingrained in your thoughts and your mind, but then also speak those things to your body, because the mind and the body work together. And one thing that I always tell people and my clients as well is that mindset is so critical. It's critical on this journey. And if you start off with like, oh, I'm going to die, I don't want to live, this is hard, all of those are valid feelings. Don't get me wrong. But those are not things that you just want to focus on. Yep, feel those feelings, work through them, but don't get stuck there. This is a time to really take charge of your life. And sometimes we just need a little more support and guidance. And that's where the affirmation cards come in. If we're not able to meet, you're sitting alone, you're just feeling down, pull out an affirmation card and focus on that card, or go through the whole deck. There's so many different ways you can use them. And I have affirmation cards for cancer patients and then also caregivers, because the caregivers are often forgotten. They have a tough time too. They have a tough job as well that they really didn't sign up for, but because they love this person, they want to, be there for them and help them the best way that they can, but they get burnt out as well. And again, these affirmation cards are just ways to replenish hope, build yourself back up, just really focus on the things that really matter in life. And that is, taking care of each other, taking care of your health, and just trying to stay in a frame of mind where you can just keep going. And again, I say it's okay to have those tough days. It's okay to not be positive all the time. It's not even realistic when you don't have cancer. But these affirmation cards are like a pick-me-up and a reminder that you are worthy. You are worthy to be healed. You are worthy to be happy and healthy. Now, on the funding side of things, because I'm an LLC, I am not a nonprofit, and that's a whole nother podcast. But there's many reasons why I don't want to become a nonprofit. But there is a way to donate if people are interested, and donating will really help me continue on with the podcast, but then also maybe gift a free session to someone in need who may not be able to afford the services. And really, for me, that's what the funding would be about, is to just be able to reach more people who would like my support, but they do not have the financial means. And that is why I put the podcast in place as well. For people who cannot work with me one-on-one, there's another option. Well, you can hear the stories of other people. You can hear tips and things like that from me as well. But the funding will really help to support other people with cancer who just don't have the means.
Absolutely. And it's such a worthy cause. We've got to figure out a way to even collaborate on that opportunity to support more. So we'll talk about that.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Absolutely. So as you're talking to the podcaster who's just getting started, they don't know what they're doing. They don't know why they're doing it. They just know they want to do it.
Yeah.
What would you say to them besides start?
Yeah. I think that I would say, don't be afraid about what other people think. Whatever God has put in you that ignited your desire to start a podcast, go with that. Listen to that voice. Stick to your goals and your values. Don't try to be like the other podcaster out there that has all these followers and views and downloads. Don't worry about those things. Stay true to yourself. Always stay true to your why. Focus on that. And make sure you have a mission before you start. What is your mission? What is your why? And then also, this is a long-term thing. For many of us, the first year, I'm into almost my third year. In August will be my third year. It's a long game. Like, I'm just now really starting to see the growth that, I would have liked to have seen in the first year. Always be willing to learn. You do not know everything. I don't know everything. Things change rapidly in terms of technology. So just, if you have the opportunity, go to free webinars, go to seminars, go to, different conferences and things like that, and just soak up the knowledge and the wisdom in the room. Talk to different people who are podcasting and just see how they're doing it, but still stay true to yourself. And don't worry about trying to be like the next person, and you'll do fine.
I have a lot of brilliance in this indie podcast space. Yours being one of them. So thank you so much. I want to ask you two more questions, and I'm gonna let you go.
Okay, let's
go.
I
want you to shout out the podcast that you wanted to shout out. Go ahead and say whatever you want to say about that awesome podcast host and podcast.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Shout out to Dee Hairston. She is the host of Diva with Depression. And speaking of, like online webinars and conferences and things like that, Dee and I just had briefly touched base during an online webinar about podcasting. And I reached out to Dee. I was really interested in learning more about her story. And from there, we've done a couple collaborations. She's been on my podcast. I've been on hers. But most importantly, I love the work that she's doing in terms of mental health and talking about it from a Black woman's perspective, which you hardly ever hear. And so check out Diva with Depression. Dee Hairston is awesome. And she told me about the Black Podcasters Association, which I have been a member of for about a month now. It has been an incredible blessing. I have met so many amazing people already, and so many great opportunities have come from that. So shout out, Dee.
Awesome. That's awesome. So where can people find more about you, learn, where to listen to the podcast, and where can we find you?
Okay. So first of all, I'll start off with my website. It is ontheotherside.life. That is ontheotherside.life. And it's .life because on the other side of cancer treatment, the tough days, there is life after cancer. Just hold on to hope, advocate for yourself, ask for help. There's life on the other side of cancer. I'm also on Instagram, and my handle there is ontheotherside17. Also on LinkedIn, you can find me, Talaya Dendy. And then also I have a business page there, which is On the Other Side. And podcast, Navigating Cancer Together, you can find me on all the major podcast platforms.
I really, really appreciate this conversation. It was amazing. You're amazing. However we can support you and keeping this good work going, this important work going, we're here for it. All right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for all you do. Thank you for doing this. And thank you for doing the Afros and audio conferences. And I think that's so important. So thank you for the work that you do in this space.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Truly. So unless there's anything you want to say to the people, I'm going to close this out.
No. Have a good day. And thank you.
Awesome. All right. So I want to give a big thanks to our Afros Audio and Black podcasts for supporting our commitment for community and collaboration. If you'd like to join Black Podcast Association, the link will be in the description. And if you want to join us at the 6th Annual Afros and Audio Podcast Festival, visit afrosandaudio.com. Follow Afros and Audio on all social media channels, and you can find and follow me at Talib Jasir on Instagram. Thanks again to Talaya for being a part of Afros and Audio's Black History Month interview series. It's been a